You can walk into a Toronto dealership today and drive off in a Shanghai-built electric car for the price of a loaded Camry. Try to buy that same car 3 hours south in Detroit, and you legally can't. It's got nothing to do with the price. Your own government just won't let it across the border. In January 2026, Canada cut a quiet deal that cracked its border open to the exact next-gen Chinese cars America spent 2 years walling out. These are the 10 Canada gets that you can't, and number 1 is going to sting. Here's how that door cracked open, because it wasn't sentiment. Canada didn't suddenly fall in love with Chinese cars. It traded for them. On January 16, 2026, Prime Minister Mark Carney signed a deal that dropped Canada's tariff on Chinese-built EVs from a brutal 100% down to just 6.1%. In return, Beijing lifted its own retaliatory tariffs on Canadian canola, peas, and seafood, crops worth billions to farmers out west. So a car deal got paid for in crops. But the headlines skipped the fine print. This isn't an open floodgate, it's a hard cap. 49,000 cars the first year, climbing to around 70,000 by 2030, handed out first come, first served, and more than half of them have to sticker under 35,000 Canadian dollars. To put that number in perspective, Canadians buy roughly 1.9 million new vehicles a year, so 49,000 works out to somewhere between 3 and 5% of the market. It's a carefully controlled crack in the wall, and for scale, look at how the 3 big Western markets answered the same wave of cheap Chinese EVs. The United States went with that blanket 100% wall. The European Union went softer. A tiered tariff that lands at a different rate for each automaker depending on how much state help it got. Canada's flat 6.1% is by a wide margin the most open of the 3. And that American wall didn't stand alone. Washington quietly poured a second one behind it. We'll come back to that second wall because it's the reason half this list can never cross the 49th parallel. First, the cars. Number 10. The Chery cars already sitting in a Toronto parking lot. Most Americans have never heard the name Chery, spelled C-H-E-R-Y, but it's one of China's largest state-owned automakers. It sells well over 1 million cars a year, and its export machine is one of the most aggressive on the planet. In May 2026, 3 of its vehicles were quietly spotted parked in Toronto: a Zeekr J5 electric SUV, an Exeed sedan, and an Omoda 9 plug-in hybrid. And the company has reportedly shipped around 150 units into the country just to get the paperwork moving. Think about the gap that opens up here. Chery has a real growing footprint across Europe, the Middle East, South America, and Australia, and back in the States it has nothing at all. No dealerships, no models, no legal way to register a single one of its cars. Its Omoda and Zeekr sub-brands lead with tech Americans rarely see at the price. Plug-in hybrid SUVs advertised with over 1,000 kilometers of combined range and interiors that read more like a lounge than a commuter car. Those 3 cars in that Toronto lot aren't a fluke. They're a foot in the door, a state-owned giant testing exactly how far it can push into North America, and it's running that test in Canada because the US slammed the door years ago. But if a company you've never heard of is already parked on this continent, the next one should genuinely worry Detroit. Number 9. Dongfeng, and the showcase it staged on the Montreal waterfront. If Chery is obscure to Americans, Dongfeng is a ghost, and it shouldn't be. It's one of the oldest and biggest car makers in China, a state-owned colossus that builds millions of vehicles a year and has run joint ventures with Nissan and Honda for decades, which means it has quietly co-built cars in American driveways for years without anyone noticing the name. In July 2026, Dongfeng became the first Chinese automaker to publicly display its own EVs on Canadian soil, rolling out 6 models at Montreal's Grand Quay on the waterfront and naming Quebec its priority market for the entire continent. Let that land for a second. A company most Americans couldn't pick out of a lineup just planted its North American flag in Quebec, roughly a 6-hour drive from New York City, and there is nothing a New York buyer can do about it. The cars themselves lean hard into the affordable next-gen bracket Canada's quota was built to invite. Compact electric crossovers and family sedans carrying the kind of fast charging and pillar-to-pillar screens that used to sit behind a luxury badge. And Dongfeng isn't arriving with rebadged econoboxes. Its newer electric lineup includes slick mid-size sedans and crossovers with the long range, rapid charging, and software-heavy cabins that define the current Chinese generation, the same features letting these brands take sales from Volkswagen across Europe. Dongfeng didn't pick Quebec on a whim. It picked the one part of North America that would actually let it in and set up a beachhead in a province where a chunk of the population already drives on cheap hydropower and warms to an EV pitch faster than most. But raw scale is one thing. This next brand is selling something no American automaker can put on a lot yet. Number 8. The XPeng G9, the closest thing to a rolling artificial intelligence computer Canada is about to get. XPeng, spelled XPeng, is one of China's sharpest EV startups, and its entire pitch is software. The G9 is its flagship SUV, an 800-volt machine that can add hundreds of kilometers of range in the time it takes to grab a coffee wrapped around a driver assistance system the company writes in-house instead of buying off a shelf. Its smaller sibling, the G6, is built specifically to fight the Tesla Model Y, which is the best-selling electric vehicle on the planet, and XPeng prices its version thousands under it while matching the range and adding faster charging. That's the pattern again and again. Take the American benchmark, match it on paper, then land well under it on price. XPeng is now working through Canadian certification, with sales expected as the quota widens over the next couple of years. And this is where the story stops being about cheap cars and starts being about capability. XPeng designs its own chips, its own autonomous driving stack, and it runs flying car and humanoid robotics divisions on the side, pouring that research straight back into the cars. The G9 is genuinely next-generation hardware, sold in China for tens of thousands less than the German SUVs it outspecs on paper. Canada gets to plug one in and find out how it actually drives through a real winter. None of it is cleared to sell in American showrooms. But if XPeng's edge is intelligence, this next brand solved a problem every EV driver complains about, and it solved it with a robot arm and a wrench. Number 7. NIO. And the battery you don't charge, you swap. Here's a mechanism the US market has almost nothing to answer with. NIO, spelled NIO, builds its cars around swappable batteries. Instead of parking at a charger for half an hour, you pull into a swap station, and in roughly 3 to 5 minutes, a robotic bay drops your depleted pack out of the floor and slots a fully charged one back in, with no cable to plug in and no standing around a rest stop. NIO already operates thousands of these stations across China and a growing web of them in Europe, and it's widely expected to follow the other Chinese brands into Canada as the quota expands and its dealer network takes shape. Picture never charging at home again, just trading an empty battery for a full one on your way through town, roughly the way you'd swap an empty propane tank for a full one outside a store. It also quietly kills the thing people fear most about buying a used EV, a worn-out, wildly expensive battery, because with NIO you never actually own the pack. You subscribe to it, and you get a healthy one every single swap. And there's a business angle underneath it too. Because you're leasing the battery rather than buying it, the sticker price of the car drops, and the automaker keeps ownership of the most valuable, most degradable part of the vehicle, then reuses it for years. That one design choice makes NIO one of the most genuinely different cars on this entire list. Canadian drivers may soon get to live with it day to day. South of the border, it stays a story you only read about, but the next name is one Americans actually do recognize, even though they've never once been allowed to buy it new. Number 6. Zeekr, Geely's tech flagship, trademarked in Canada and shut out of the States. Zeekr, spelled Zeekr, is the premium electric brand from Geely, the sprawling Chinese group that also owns Volvo, Polestar, and Lotus. It brought its Zeekr 01 to the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas in early 2026, parked it out at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway for the cameras, and let a room full of Americans admire a car they will not be able to register at home. Zeekr had already trademarked its name in Canada back in 2025, laying the legal groundwork to sell there once the door opened. And the cars earn the attention. They run 800-volt architecture, huge usable range, and charging speeds that embarrass most of what sits on North American lots today, plus interiors packed with the kind of screens and self-driving hardware Zeekr uses to justify a premium price. Here's the quiet irony baked into it. Zeekr rides on the same Geely engineering platform as the Volvo EX30, a small electric crossover Americans can already walk in and buy, just with a Swedish badge bolted to the nose instead of a Chinese one. Underneath, they're close cousins. The only real thing separating them is which logo is on the hood and which showroom is allowed to sell it. Canada is moving to let in the Zeekr branded version. America gets the Volvo-badged one built on the identical bones and calls the matter closed, and that points at something most people get wrong about this whole fight. Chinese-built cars have quietly sold in the United States for years. The Buick Envision, the Lincoln Nautilus, the old Volvo S90, all assembled in China, all wearing familiar American or Swedish badges, all sitting in US driveways right now. The line Washington actually drew was never really about where a car gets bolted together. It's about whose brand is on the hood, and increasingly, whose software is running inside it. But badge games are one thing. The next car turned the simple arrival of a Chinese-built EV into an actual milestone. Number 5. The Lotus Electra, a 900-horsepower Chinese hyper SUV that became a milestone. For decades, Lotus meant tiny, featherweight British sports cars built for corners, not comfort. Under Geely's ownership, it now also means the Electra, a battery-electric super SUV assembled in Wuhan, China, that makes north of 900 horsepower. Sprints from a standstill to highway speed in under 3 seconds, rides on an 800-volt system for rapid charging, and still seats a family of 5 with room for their luggage. And it carries a distinction nothing else on this list can claim. When Geely shipped the Electra to Canada, complete with a delivery ceremony in Montreal and a price trimmed to around $119,900 Canadian dollars, it became the first Chinese-owned, Chinese-built EV to officially arrive for sale under the new trade deal. That's the symbolic line in the sand. An unmistakably Chinese car crossing into North America legally, badge and all, with a ribbon cutting on the dock. In the United States, Geely's plans are moving the opposite direction entirely, and Lotus's electric future there looks like something America may never actually see. It's the same parent company and the same factory country in both cases, yet Canada threw the car a waterfront ceremony while Washington is busy shutting Geely out of its market entirely. Now, the Electra is a 6-figure toy, and almost nobody reading a price tag like that is losing sleep. But it proved the pipeline works end to end. And once a pipeline can move a 900 horsepower flagship, it can move the car that actually keeps legacy executives up at night. If you're finding this useful, take a second and subscribe, because I break down exactly this kind of China tech and strategy story every single week, the mechanics behind the headline instead of the hype. Now the final 4, where the prices crater, the technology gets wilder, and the real reason America is locked out finally snaps into focus. Number 4, BYD, the world's largest EV maker, finally getting real Canadian dealerships. This is the heavyweight. BYD now outsells Tesla globally. It's backed by Warren Buffett, and its signature technology is the Blade battery, a lithium iron phosphate pack built flat into the floor of the car. It's cheaper to make, far more stable in a crash or a fire than older chemistries, and tough enough that BYD famously ran a fully loaded truck straight over one on video just to prove it wouldn't ignite. When Canada's 100% tariff hit, BYD shelved its planned launch and walked away. The moment that tariff dropped to 6.1%, it came roaring straight back. It registered vehicles built in Shenzhen and Xi'an with Transport Canada, and its executive vice president Stella Lee said the company intends to open more than 20 dealerships across Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, and Calgary by the end of 2026, launching with models like the Atto 3 crossover and the Seal sedan. One honesty flag, the aggressive entry pricing she floated, starting around 25,000 Canadian dollars, is her stated target and hasn't been confirmed in a formal company release yet, so treat it as ambition, not a sticker. But even the confirmed picture is stark enough. The single biggest EV company on Earth is signing commercial leases and building a physical retail network in Canadian cities right now, and it cannot legally sell you one single car in Phoenix or Miami or Chicago, but BYD has one more card to play, and it's a car so cheap the price looks like a typo. Number 3, the BYD Dolphin Surf, the electric car that costs less than a lot of used gas cars. In China, BYD's smallest EV, sold there as the Seagull, starts at around 69,800 yuan. Convert that and you're staring at a brand new electric car for roughly $9,600 US. Not a lease, not a stripped out gimmick, a genuine 4-seat city car with a real battery and a real warranty, bought outright for less than plenty of used gas cars on an American lot today. Badged the Dolphin Surf for export markets, it is exactly the vehicle Canada's quota was engineered to pull in, because remember, More than half of those 49,000 annual permits are reserved specifically for cars stickering under 35,000 Canadian dollars. Ottawa didn't just open the door, it wrote the rules to invite the cheap stuff through first. Prices like that don't come from cutting corners. They come from a brutal price war inside China, where dozens of domestic brands are fighting for the same buyers, driving costs down to levels no Western automaker can currently touch, which is exactly why BYD is so eager to export into calmer, more profitable markets abroad. This is the affordability bomb, and it's the clearest possible illustration of why the two countries split the way they did. A $30,000 Chinese EV lands in Canada and pays a 6.1% tariff, so it stays roughly a $30,000 car. That same vehicle hitting the American 100% wall doesn't cost $30,000 anymore. It costs $60,000, which is just a polite way of saying nobody bothers to import it. To put the whole thing in perspective, the average new car sold in America today runs north of $48,000. Canada is about to get real. Next-gen electric cars at a third of that number. That is the gap that makes this entire story sting for anyone watching from the American side. But the reason America can't simply drop its tariff and catch up is that second wall I promised you, and it's standing right behind the next car on the list. Number 2. Polestar, the Chinese-built EV that America is now actively kicking out of its own market. Here's the twist that flips this whole countdown on its head. Polestar, the sleek electric brand spun out of Volvo and owned by Geely, was already on sale in the United States. Americans could walk in and buy the Polestar 2 and the Polestar 4, the sharp coupe SUV with no rear window, just a roof-mounted camera and a screen. And now America is forcing that brand out. This is the second wall I kept promising. Sitting on top of the 100% tariff, the U.S. Bureau of Industry and Security finalized what's called the Connected Vehicle Rule, a national security regulation that restricts Chinese-developed software and hardware inside internet-connected cars, driven by fears over exactly how much data a modern vehicle quietly collects and beams home. Think location history, cabin microphones, driving patterns, everywhere you go and roughly when. The software side of the ban has already taken effect, with the hardware restrictions scheduled to follow by 2029. And that rule is squeezing Polestar out of the American market as of the 2027 model year, purely because of its Chinese ownership, not because of anything wrong with the car. Meanwhile, Polestar keeps right on selling across Canada as one of the earliest winners of the new quota. So look at what that actually means. Canada opened one door. America bolted 2 locks, a tariff and a data rule, and the data lock is powerful enough to evict a brand that was already parked in the country. Trump's own ambassador in Ottawa put it about as plainly as it gets, saying those cars can roll into Canada all they want, but they are not crossing into the States. And the reason he leaned on had nothing to do with the tariff. He pointed straight at the data these connected cars quietly collect. Which brings us to number 1, and the name absolutely nobody expects. Number 1. The single biggest winner of Canada's Chinese car quota is Tesla. Read that again slowly. After everything, after BYD and XPeng and NIO and the rest, the brand grabbing the largest slice of those precious 49,000 permits so far is the American one, Tesla, shipping a car it builds in Shanghai. On May 1st, 2026, Tesla began selling a Shanghai-built Model 3 in Canada, the premium rear-wheel drive version, for $30,490 Canadian dollars, which is roughly $27,900 US dollars. That is about half the price of the cheapest Model 3 Canadians could get the year before, and it still delivers 463 kilometers, around 288 miles, of range. Because it rolls out of a factory in China, it flows straight through the very same 6.1% quota that BYD and Chery are scrapping over. By some estimates, Tesla alone absorbed somewhere between 7,000 and 10,000 of the first batch of 2,400 permits, more than any actual Chinese automaker managed while they were still hiring staff and scouting dealer lots. And there's a second layer to why Tesla moved so fast. Its Canadian sales had collapsed in 2025, down more than 60% as buyers cooled on the brand and its politics. So a Shanghai-built car at half the old price is also Tesla trying to buy its way back into a market it was actively losing. The quota was pitched as a lifeline for Chinese startups. So far, the biggest beneficiary has been Tesla. So the great Chinese car invasion of Canada, the one this entire video is built around, is being led, at least for now, by a Shanghai-built Tesla wearing an American badge, sold at a price no US buyer is allowed to touch because Washington will not let that specific Chinese-built car in. Tesla was simply first through the door Canada opened for China, and the affordable Shanghai-built sedan is not even the cheapest surprise headed north. Because the next shoe to drop is an SUV, a Chinese-built electric SUV priced at just $27,937 that's finally clearing the last of the paperwork to reach North American driveways, undercutting nearly everything on this list. I broke down exactly which one it is, where it's landing first, and why it might be the single car that cracks the whole continent open in the video on screen right now. Start there.